Bonne soirée à tous et bienvenue à cette rencontre du comité de dérogation pour la ville d'Ottawa. Welcome everyone to this public hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. As you know, the Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal that's appointed by city councils to make certain decisions under the Planning Act, most notably consents and minor variances. My name is Anne Tremblay, and I will be your chair this evening. With me tonight are my fellow panel members. We have Mr. Colin White, Ms. Kathleen Willis, and Mr. Scott Hindle. Also with us this evening, we have Deputy Secretary Treasurer Cheryl Williams. And we also have some coordinators that are what makes, as I've said before, the magic happen here. So Alexander Jones, Emily Byers, and Mandy Nguyen. So thanks so much to our committee staff. As you probably all know already, is that this is live streamed on YouTube. So you can either access this video or the agenda just by going to the city's website after the hearing is over, and then you can access that information. If you have any issues with any of that, just reach out to committee staff and they'll be able to help out. So before I begin, there are a number of issues surrounding the city that they're broad, and this committee is very limited in its jurisdiction. So the kinds of things that we can't deal with essentially are aspects that are not related to the proposal. So in our applications, we have in the notices very clear what each application is about. And we really can't deal with anything outside of that. So if the relief, for example, that's being requested is something to do with height, then we can deal with it. If, however, there's a proposal and there's a concern about height, but no relief is required from the zoning bylaw, then that's a good example of something that we really can't talk about because we don't have any jurisdiction to do anything about it. It's deemed to conform with the zoning bylaw at that point. So we also can't deal with anything that has to do with property values or property maintenance or any noise from neighbors or that kind of thing. Also, we treat every application as if no development or construction has happened. So if there's any issues with illegal construction, that kind of thing, we don't deal with that here. We really do have to look at the application on its merit. Also, we don't, certainly will not entertain any negative comments about the applicant or the agent or in relation to a neighbor or any of that. So please be mindful that this is a quasi-judicial tribunal, and we do expect everyone to conduct themselves respectfully. And also, if we find, and this has happened, where during the course of discussion, we realize that greater relief from the zoning bylaw is required, or maybe an amendment, further minor variance is required. In those cases, then we have to adjourn that particular item and take the time to recirculate the application properly reflecting the accurate information. So. And then with regards to statutory public notification requirements. So everyone is required to post a sign on their property. And then typically there is a statutory declaration form that gets submitted. So on our agenda tonight, we have one application for which we received a hard copy, so that's good. But what we've been defaulting to for the last 3 years, folks, it feels, yep, last 3 years online pretty much. We've been defaulting to an oral swearing or affirmation of that declaration for the sign posting. So we're going to be doing some of those this evening. So with respect to quorum, if we lose the technology for whatever reason, then and we can't reestablish quorum or reestablish the meeting, then we will step down whatever items have not been decided upon to the very next meeting of the committee. So during the hearing process, so you saw there was an agenda at the start of the meeting. There's at the chair's discretion, we can move some of those items around. And what you'll find is we'll deal with the adjournments first, and then we'll go to the agenda. And there's a couple of items that are really very simple, non-controversial. And for those, we're going to bring them a little bit forward in the agenda. So not too much of that, but there is maybe a couple of applications. So with that, then, in some cases, we ask for a presentation by the agent or owner. In some cases, not. So the committee does take a considerable amount of time looking at all of the file information before we actually get into this hearing, including a pre-meet. So any last minute information, that kind of thing, we do get a chance, maybe not to review it in depth, but at least we become familiar with it. So in that case, what we do is we simply default to the panel members to ask questions for clarification. If there's no questions, then we go directly to the public hearing. And I do have a speakers list. If I have somebody on the list for a particular item, I will call those people first, and then I will go to opening it to anyone who may have an interest in the application. So even if you're not on the speakers list, it doesn't matter. You can simply raise your hand. The coordinators will see you and will bring you into the panel side of the discussion, and then we're fine. The only thing I'll ask in those cases is that you give us your full name and your municipal address as you start, because we don't have that record. For people who are on the list, we already have all of that information, but for anybody that's new, then if you could just read that into the record for us, that would be helpful. So then what happens once we have had everyone's input on the public side of things, we then close down that public portion and give the committee members a chance to either ask questions of the speakers that came forward or ask further clarifying questions, because to be quite honest, we get a lot of really good information from residents. So we do appreciate your participation in these hearings. And that then gives us the opportunity to get clarification on some of the issues that residents often raise. So we'll do that. And then once that happens, the committee is ready to make a decision. And we either obviously can grant the application, we can deny the application. We occasionally reserve. Hasn't happened in a while, but that normally means that we've had enough new evidence given to us orally during the hearing that we need that extra time after the hearing, where we reconvene and make a decision based on further deliberation. So after all that, once the decision has been made, then there's a written decision that is essentially sent out within 10 days of the committee hearing. And that decision essentially outlines the reasons for the committee's decision. So if you're unhappy with that decision, then you can appeal. And I'm going to actually provide a qualifier to that in just a minute, but within the 10 days of the hearing, that formal decision goes out. But now we have the adoption of Bill 23, and it's in full force and effect, which means that decisions of the Committee of Adjustment continue to be appealable within 20 days of the hearing, but only by the applicant, the minister, or a specified person or public body that has an interest in the matter. And the specified person does not include an individual or a community association. So very much reduced appeal provisions under that bill. So with that, then I think we can go to our agenda. I'm going to call first for any declarations of conflict of interest to either any of the items on our agenda this evening or any of the agendas on the previous panel. So yes, Ms. Willis, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have to declare a conflict for item 13, 6301 Campo Drive. That property was sold to the applicant Bayview Hospitality Group by the Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation. And I am the vice chair of the board of directors of OCLDC, and as such have been involved in this sale. So I think it's appropriate that I declare a conflict on this item.
All right, thank you, Ms. Willis. Anyone else with any declarations of conflict of interest? Okay, so with that, then we can go to confirmation of the minutes. As you know, we have the minutes of January 11th. We've had a chance to review them. Do I have someone who can move a motion to, okay, so Ms. Willis, like any seconder on that, All right, with Mr. Hindle, the approval of the minutes is carried by the committee for January 11th. Then I guess the next thing we're going to go to is the adjournment request, and we have a number of those this evening. So I'm going to start with applications 4 and 5, and that's for 31 Starwood. And the agent that I have on record for that one, actually, I think we're going to go to the owner, Mr. Jude, I believe, is going to speak to the adjournment request. Or sorry, no, my mistake. It's Mr. Alves. Mr. Alves is the agent for that one.
That's correct. That's me. Sorry. That was on me.
My apologies. I was looking at 3 instead of 4 and 5. But okay, so on that, you're aware of the request for adjournment?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to just briefly explain why the adjournment?
I just need a little more time to update the documents sent to the city. We will reduce the number of variances requested. And the variances will be only regarding the lot size and lot width.
All right.
And
so in that case,
yeah, go ahead, sir.
Any questions from the committee on the proposal? And this is a proposal for adjournment sine die. Go ahead, Member White.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment on the submission. I note that I think we're dealing with both variances, minor variances, and consent applications here. The planning rationale provides rationale with respect to the tests, the Planning Act tests for minor variances. However, I don't see anything in the submission relative to the tests required under the consent under the consent application for the consent application. Just
right,
that perhaps we could get some submission on that.
All right. So who is on that application? Is that, sorry, is it Ms. Sclazero? So Ms. Sclazero.
Oh, pardon me. Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm here. I just had to turn on my mic.
So I think all that Member White is asking for is some planning discussion surrounding the 4 tests for the consent portion in the planning report when it comes back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So a consent itself is not evaluated against the 4 tests, but I did note in the additional comment section that with respect to the criteria under Section 51 of the Planning Act, I had no concerns with the consent.
Madam Chair, I was directing the concern more to the applicants than the staff report.
Oh, in the planning rationale that was submitted in the notice, or where?
Oh, the planning rationale, the covering letter that was submitted.
Oh, in the report. I see. Okay. All right. So, Mr. Alves, can you do that then? Thank you, Ms. Sclazero, for that. And so, Mr. Alves, can you then revise your report when you come back to us to include that section 51 dealing with the consent, I believe, and the rationale? So,
yes, I will.
Is that,
thank you.
All right, thank you. Member White, anything else? That's good. Anybody else on the committee? All right, so we do have speakers that on my list for this, but it is an adjournment. So it's the City View Ryan Farm Community Association. Does anyone from either community association want to speak to the adjournment request?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say that we're in agreement with the adjournment request. It's Nancy Wilson, and City View Ryan Farm is one community association now. It's not 2 separate ones.
Aha. Okay.
Just so you know. But no, we have nothing. Thank you.
All right. That's good to know because we've always seen City View, but not Ryan Farms together. So, so that's good. Really is good.
We just got together this year.
Aha. Okay. So you were 2 separate groups. Okay. All right. So that's good. Anybody else in the audience want to speak either in support of or in opposition to the adjournment request sine die? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. So committee, I think we could make a decision. All those in favor of the adjournment sine die for 31 Starwood. All right, so for the record, the decision to adjourn is unanimous. So thank you very much, Mr. Alves, and we'll see you again.
Thank you.
All right, so the next adjournment that we have is for applications 8 and 9, looking for Mr. Yapkotsi, and it's in relation to 50 Rebecca Crescent. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
So, Mr. Kotze, you are aware that there is a request for adjournment on this application?
Yes, and we're also asking for an adjournment. And we've modified that to ask for an adjournment sine die.
Okay, all right. And the reason then for the adjournment, just for the record?
The reason for the adjournment is that we want to review the actual severance line in conjunction with staff. We had some discussion very early on, felt that we did have a line that they were comfortable with to some degree. We knew that there was some differing opinions on that. However, at this point in time, we've agreed to review that line and probably change it. And this will also require new minor variances. So we would be looking for a recirculation regardless. So the preference would be a sine die adjournment.
All right, thank you. Just one other question then, Mr. Avocazzi. What kind of consultation did you undertake to get to this evening in the first place? Because I don't know if you're aware, but there's been a lot of opposition to both especially the consent application. So can you tell me a little bit about the consultation you undertook today?
So we flyered the neighborhood. We also contacted the counselor and the community association, and we also had a public Zoom meeting with all of the people who wanted to participate in the meeting. We were quite aware of 41 Rebecca, and we've had some good discussions with the community association in specifics. But I'm not so sure that some of the changes that we will make will necessarily change the minds of the community, but I think they have a better understanding of why this kind of application is being made, and that was the attempt at the Zoom meeting that we had.
All right, so Mr. Yocasa, what I'll ask you to do though is make sure that the community is made aware of the revisions that you're considering and the minor variances. And of course, they'll get circulated, but I would just encourage you to keep that outreach with residents in the community association area.
It's likely that we'll probably have another Zoom meeting, Madam Chair.
All right, okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee to Mr. Yocasa in the adjournment? Okay. All right. So there are some people who are registered to speak on the item, but does anybody who's on our speakers list, and I'm looking at Mr. Ho, Mr. Osterhout, Mr. Bateman, do either of you want to speak to the adjournment request sine die?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's Philip Osterhout. I'm counsel for Mr. Ho. We support the adjournment request and have nothing further to add.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak either in support or in opposition to this adjournment sine die? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. So members of the panel, all those in favor of the adjournment? All right, so for the record, the application is adjourned sine die and it's unanimous. So thank you very much, Mr. Yalkatsi, and good luck.
Thank you.
All right, so the next one that we have is applications 11 and 12 for 864 to 866 Woodruff, and I believe Mr. Miller is the agent for this application.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Murray Chown speaking. I'll be appearing on behalf of Mr. Miller.
Oh, all right, then. So you're aware of the request for adjournment?
Yes, absolutely, I am. We're seeking to adjourn sine die, please.
All right, thank you. Can you just briefly give us the reasons for the adjournment?
So simply because our client is concerned once about some of the comments related to trees and the condition related to trees. And so he is looking for additional information before the application comes forward.
All right, okay. So any questions for Mr. Town on the adjournment? No? All right, let me just see if we've got anybody here. So we have a resident, Mr. Huck, Leo Huck, resident of 866 Woodruff Avenue. I guess he's, I don't think it's a resident, but did that individual want to speak either for or against the adjournment, Sunny Day? All right, I'm not seeing that person come forward. So is there anyone in the audience?
Hello?
Yes, hello?
Yes, this is Leo Hack.
Okay, did you want to make either any comments in support or against the adjournment request?
No, we're just following the discussion and if there's any implications for us. So no other comments.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this adjournment request? Sine die for 864 Woodruff. All right, not seeing anybody come forward. So the members of the panel, all those in favor of the adjournment. For the record, the application is adjourned. Sine die unanimously. So thank you, Mr. Chown, and good luck with
Thank you very much.
So before we move on to the agenda, there's one more I'd like to call down, Mr. Segreto on 1427 Bellamy. And I think we're going to want to speak to staff as well on this one. And who have we got? Mr. Griff? All right, good evening, Mr. Segreto.
Good evening.
So, Mr. Segreto, we've got a staff report that suggests that there are still minor variances. So here we have a consent application, but seemingly all at the same time, where minor variances are required in order to make the proposal work. Is that correct?
This is such an unusual site that when you're looking at this particular neighborhood, there's about 15 or 20 semis in the area, and they're all on the same lot. Unfortunately, what has happened in the past that the lot widths and the lot areas were such that they were 7.5 meters, and I believe the lot areas were, I forget what the lot areas were. I don't have it right here in front of me, but in any event, what has happened due to the fact that the time has changed, what now, in order to legalize this thing, we need 9 meters for lot width. And originally all these houses were built on lot widths of 7.5. So then what has to happen is, yes, we do need 2 minor variances, and we'll have to apply for the variances. I don't know if there's an advantage to go tonight and have the variances as a condition for lot width and lot area, or to not sine die the file, but maybe make the applications because the applications for minor variances are so straightforward.
So, Mr. Segreto, you know, it would be highly unusual to proceed with a consent without the minor variances, knowing that the minor variances are required. So, and I think you've done enough applications with them together that you know that that's the recipe that we follow for the most part.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so the question is, you know, sine die. It doesn't make any differences, you know, Mr. Segreto, to whether it's sine die or it's to another date. It still needs to be recirculated. So we don't really see an advantage to naming a date at this point. So it really comes down to as soon as you can get.
The problem is if you sine die it, then you have a cost with the sine die, and then there's an additional cost for the variances, right?
So apparently not. Not. We had a discussion about that, where in fact you're going to be into a recirculation cost anyway because of the minor variance, and then you're going to pay for the application. So I don't think, and I'm going to just ask again for clarification then from our Deputy Secretary Treasurer, Ms. Williams, just to confirm that in fact there's no added cost in this case.
In this case, there would not be. It would just be the cost for the minor variance applications.
All right, so Mr. Segredo, if you're okay, then we're just going to sign a diet.
That's fine, then, and I'll get the thing. No problem.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so just before you go away, though, we have to do the public portion of this.
Yep.
There's still a public portion. So
Yep.
I don't have anybody on the speakers list, but is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against the adjournment of application number 1 for 1427 Bellamy to sine die adjourn? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone. So with that, members of the panel, all those in favor? All right, so the application is adjourned sine die, Mr. Segredo, and it's unanimous. So thank you very much, and we'll see you
Thank
again.
you. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go to our regular agenda, but I am going to call down one ahead of the others, and that would be number 7 for 3745 St. Joseph Boulevard. Mr. Lalonde, I believe, is the agent for that one. Do we have Mr. Lalonde?
Hello?
Oh,
Hello?
all right.
Hi.
Can you put your camera on by any
Yes.
chance? Okay.
Just figuring it out here. Okay, just a moment here.
All right, so maybe while you're doing that, I'm going to read to you, and then I'll
Okay.
need you to
Yes.
respond.
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was visible and legible during the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
Yes, I do.
Can you either affirm or swear that to be true?
I can affirm and swear that to be true.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so your camera has not come on yet. We don't need a presentation from you this evening. It's a very
Okay.
straightforward application, so I'm going to throw it out to the committee members right now. Anybody have any questions on this one? Nope, no questions. So, all right, so this is very simple. We're just looking at creating easements. Mr. Hendel, did you have any questions on this one?
Yeah, you're right. Good catch, Madam Chair. I just had the question. I know the notice talked about an easement for maintenance and access only. However, I note in the survey that there is an existing AC, gas meter, ladder, pipes, and all that good stuff that are located within the easement area. Is that something that has been discussed and is included in the easement wording such that it's fine, or are those being relocated?
As far as I'm concerned, it's included and it's fine.
Okay, so it's really an easement that's more than just access and maintenance. It's for some structures and other things as well.
Well, my understanding is the access would allow maintenance of that equipment that's there.
Okay, I mean, I'm typically used to maintenance or access easements that are designed just for kind of egress and that kind of thing, not necessarily for the storage and ongoing use of an easement for specific pieces. But as long as you're comfortable that it's covered and it's fine, then I don't have major concerns.
Okay, I'm comfortable.
All right, I think, you know what, Mr. Hindle, you raised a good question about what that is. You know, what's the definition of a maintenance access? So the planner on this application was Mr. If I can find that, Ragasor. Did I
Yes,
probably got that wrong?
Ivode, yes.
Okay, so do we have that planner here or a planner who can speak on his behalf? Ms. Glazero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here in my colleague Avode's place, but he did not provide me any information related to the specific question.
Okay, so maybe just in general then, and I'm going to open this up to Ms. Kelly as well if she wants to pipe in. Given that we're specifically granting a maintenance, so just make sure we have the words right from the notice. So it's a maintenance access easement as opposed to a maintenance equipment storage. I guess is what we're really getting at here. So so that access easement then is intended to be clear at all times. Would that be fair to say?
Through you, Madam Chair, it's my understanding that the applicant can structure the easement agreement any way that they see fit. So that gives them the flexibility to kind of build that in. So I don't think we have any issues with how the easement that the committee is granting this evening is worded.
All right. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that we, it's for my education. It's obviously for my education, but anyway, thank you for, ladies for that. That's very much appreciated. Okay. On that application then, do I have any speakers? Any other questions then before I go to the speakers list? No? All right. Nobody registered. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against what's really just the provision of a maintenance access for the property? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. So then panel members, all those in favor? Okay, so the application is granted unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Lalonde.
Thank you very much.
All right. On to the next, which is, let's see, where are we after this? Let's give me a moment. Let's go to application number 6, which is for 1353 Kingston Avenue. And I'm looking for Delia Mota.
Hello.
Yes, hello. Good evening.
Hi. Good evening.
All right. So I'm going to need to read to you before we go. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that the sign was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm that to be true.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to open it up to the panel members for questions. Anybody got anything to ask on this consent application? No? All right, okay. On this application then, number 6, do I have any speakers? Just give me a moment. No, I have no speakers for this application for consent. The application is to subdivide a property into 2 separate parcels for the construction of a semi-detached dwelling. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against this proposal at 1353 Kingston? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody come forward. So there are conditions, Ms. Moda, attached to this this application. So
okay.
You've read the conditions. You're aware of them.
Yeah, the document that you sent.
Yep, you've got 7 conditions from what I can see.
Yeah. So in regards to some of them, I've already submitted like a demolition and a building permit, and they're both like approved, but like the demo is approved. One of them is approved just contingent on the severance being approved, and then one's just contingent on the demo being approved. So they're all been reviewed, like rating the services, the building plans, everything is good to go on 1353 Kingston and 1351, that's the designated. The draft reference plan mentioned there's a discrepancy between the landscaping plan and the draft reference, but the draft reference, that's the final and official one done by our surveyor. So that's the one to be used, because sometimes potentially landscaping, they could be using an approximation. I've already spoken to my neighbor for the boundary tree, and he signed the consent form to remove the tree. Like, he has no qualms with that.
All right.
My cash in lieu of parkland, I've already gotten the quote of $9,000 from Ali Man at the city of Ottawa, and it's just to be paid upon picking up my building permit. So that's also ready to go. And my lawyer is going to prepare that joint maintenance common agreement form. He just wants like to confirm the meeting minutes and anything that might arise, and then he's going to prepare that. So I think most.
All right, well, that's an excellent summary, and
Yeah.
you actually even managed to answer the one question I had regarding the discrepancy between the reference plan and the landscaping plan. So thank you for that. Okay, so I think I've already gone out to the public, and I think I'm ready. We're ready for a vote, if I remember correctly. So members of the panel, all those in favor of this consent application? All right, so for the record, then Ms. Moda, the application is unanimously granted by the panel. So good luck. Looks
Okay,
like you've
thank you so
already
much.
got a lot of things well in
Yes.
hand. So
Yes, a lot of it's done, just kind of waiting on the final piece here. So thank you.
excellent. All right, good luck. Have a nice evening. Bye now. Okay, so let's move on to the next application. All right, let's do number 10, which is for 3968 Russell Road. Looking for Ms. Dow.
Good
Good
evening, Madam
evening.
Chair, Committee. Good evening.
Gonna need to read to you. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that the sign was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do I swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm.
All right, thank you very much. So fairly simple application. Looks like we're regularizing an awful lot. You're in the site plan process. Can you tell me a little bit about where you are there?
Sure. So we have been undertaking the site plan review process for a couple of years now, and we're just at the final stages of review. So the city has undertaken 3 to 4 formal rounds of review. The only minor issues outstanding are just a few engineering related comments and potentially just some slight reconfiguration of the lines of the parking spaces, but otherwise all major issue resolution has been completed to this point. So the final outstanding issue would be regularization of the requested minor variances, and then just those minor engineering responses.
Okay, the landscaping variance, is that a regularization or is that actually to implement the site plan?
That would be a regularization. So essentially the site plan that was submitted as part of the minor variance application is a reflection of the survey materials. So it's primarily for the parking area, the landscape buffer adjacent to the parking area. There will be additional landscaping that is added to the site on the east side of the property along Russell Road with the implementation of the stormwater management pond.
Okay, just wanted to confirm actually that we were essentially trying to regularize an existing situation, but for the landscaping, I wasn't too sure on that one. So, okay, any questions from the panel? Member White, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question regarding that stormwater management pond. Is that a pond that will serve only this property, or is it part of a system that will affect other properties as well, or is it just site specific?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is, from what I understand, a site-specific stormwater management pond strictly for this property.
Sorry, follow up, Madam Chair. In terms of, I'm assuming that site plan agreement will include maintenance responsibilities for that pond?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we haven't gotten to the stage of the preparation of the delegated authority report, but yes, the property, the stormwater management pond is fully on this property, and so it would be, I would presume, included in some type of condition for the site plan agreement. I would require staff, the site plan review staff's confirmation on how that will look. But because we haven't had that full discussion yet, but I presume that to be the case since it is fully within the property boundaries of this parcel.
Member White, I thought you were getting at sort of the benefiting owners and maybe joint use and like, is that what you were looking for?
I think that's been answered. It sounds as if that this is only going to serve this property. I'm just wondering about the participation of them, if there's any responsibility or continued obligation for the city with respect to that pond, or if it's simply the maintenance, long-term maintenance of it is covered in the site plan agreement. I'm not sure if staff might be able to address that question.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I don't have any details about what would entail in terms of maintenance of the stormwater management pond. However, I have seen instances where conditions have been incorporated into the site plan approval and then subsequent site plan agreement.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else on the panel? So Ms. Dow, the only question that I have that's sort of outstanding is, so what was the trigger for the site plan? Was it, so how come you're into this? So it sounds like the property has been in the condition that it's in for a number of times. I guess, what was the trigger to get to site plan?
So I think it was a progression over a number of years of addition of uses as the landscaping business that's currently operating there has grown. And from what I understand, it was triggered through a bylaw complaint. And so we are rectifying those issues now and ensuring that we go through the proper procedures to regularize the conditions.
All right. So we are proposing to tie the approvals pretty rigidly to the plans. So you were talking about minor tweaking of parking lines. Is it really minor?
Yeah, so actually what it is, Madam Chair, is through just the sort of final review that was undertaken by staff, there was some questions about just double checking the parking counts and parking configurations. And our designer noticed that actually the way that the lines are painted on just, I think it's about 3 or 4 of the parking spaces are actually undersized per zoning. So the only change would be just to create a fully zoning compliant 5 by 2, 2.6 by 5.2 parking space. And I think 2 or 3 of those cases, I do actually have that site plan on file. It was just sent to me yesterday. So, but there was no impacts to the variances. So I didn't feel it was necessary. I thought it could be dealt with through the site plan process because the intention would be to fully zoning comply with those provisions. So I think that would be the only issue in terms of tying to plans. Insofar as it relates to the buildings and the structures on site, I would have no concerns with them fully being tied to the plans filed.
Okay, so if you've got a plan that you received as late as yesterday that shows exactly the configuration of those parking spaces the way that they're going to be, then let's do that. Let's tie it strictly to that plan. And can you give me the date on that plan so that when we make reference to it, we know exactly which one we're talking about?
Sure, and I'll just pull it up so I have that on file, and I will send it to the committee coordinators right away as well.
Okay, so maybe we don't. I guess the only intent, and I guess I'm speaking to committee staff on this, is just make sure then, like we are going to tie it to plans, but not the plans before us, but rather the revised plan that's coming forward. The only caveat is if you find in your review of that plan that somehow it is, you know, I guess substantially different from what we're looking at tonight, then it'll have to probably come back to us.
So,
for
Madam
an
Chair,
amendment.
Madam Chair, if you don't mind, my only slight concern would be that staff has not reviewed this plan. I don't anticipate, and I've looked it over, and I don't anticipate any other issues because it's substantially the same, with the exception of just adjusting the parking issue. Would committee have concerns with tying strictly to building locations and landscape buffer locations and allowing for some flexibility just with the actual stall locations? Is that, I'm not sure how that could be sort of worded.
How about we tie it strictly to plans with the exception of the parking area?
Okay.
And the reason why is for things like the landscaping buffer, right? So the way it's written is it opens the door to a lot more, and we don't want to do that. So so we will give that flexibility that they generally to the plan with regards to the parking spaces, and I think that'll work.
And just to reiterate as well, there is no intention for any new development or construction on the site other than the installation of the stormwater management pond. So the site is otherwise remaining fully unchanged.
Okay, thank you. All right. And I think the committee's had a chance to ask questions. So I'm looking at my list. There's no one to speak to this item. So is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak either for or against the application at 3968 Russell Road for minor variances to regularize an existing business? Okay, all right. In that case, members of the committee, all those in favor? Okay, so the application is unanimously granted. Thank you so much, Ms. Dawood.
Thanks very much. Have a great evening.
You too. All right, so we're going to go to, let's go to 2 and 3. So 2 and 3 is for Clover, and I am looking for Mr. Jude in this case. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, so before we get going, I'm going to need to read to you. So do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted first at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that the sign was clearly visible and legible for the entirety of that time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I do confirm that to be true.
Okay. So this application has had a lot of interest in it up to date. So, you know what I think we're going to do is just have you briefly explain what the proposal is about, and then we're going to open it up to questions.
Okay, no, does that?
Sorry, we can't hear you. You're on mute for whatever reason. Okay, still can't hear you. Any luck? No way. Okay, so I'll tell you what, maybe what we'll do is we'll step this one down. We'll deal with application number 14 and we'll come back to you. We'll give you a chance to work out your audio issues and then we'll come back. How's that? All right, so with that then we will go to 14 and it's for 15 Lotta. And the person I'm looking for on this one then would be, just a minute, Mr. Robertson. Is that possible? Mr. Robertson. Yep. Mr. Robertson, are you there? Yes, I can see you're there. Great. Mr. Robertson? Good evening. Yep, we can hear you. That's good. So I'm going to read to you before we get going then. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, that it was there for the prescribed number of days prior to the hearing, and that it was visible and legible for the entirety of the time? Do you either swear or affirm that to be true?
I affirm that.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so this is an application for a minor variance. We're not going to request a presentation from you on this, so I'm going to open it up to the committee members for questions. Any questions from the committee? I think we're pretty, so you're looking at doing an addition to the back, in addition to a one-story addition to the rear of your attached dwelling. It's essentially going to be completely over top the same dwelling, so you're not bumping out the walls or doing any of that, if I understand things correctly.
It's in the backyard behind the house.
Yeah.
We're basically turning a 2-story house into a bungalow.
We don't have an existing bedroom on the bottom floor. So we're adding a bedroom behind our bathroom so that we can stay here longer in our old age.
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay. Sorry. I was confusing this with another very similar application, so my apologies. Okay. So, and I don't think we have any comments from anybody. Just have a look to see if we have any speakers on this. But questions from the committee. Does anybody want to ask Mr. Robertson any questions about this proposal? I think it's pretty straightforward. I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
So we have the City View Community Association that's on my speakers list. So Ms. Wilson, did you want to speak to this proposed development?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is our perfect time to say what we need to say about minor variances. So we just would like to say that this is a perfect example of a minor variance. The only variance being asked for here is to allow the rear yard setback of 6.79 meters instead of the required 8.1 meters for a small portion of the lot. This is a minor variance of 1.3 meters. This lot is 100 feet by 95 feet, so the reduced setback will have little effect on the privacy and the outdoor amenity space, and no trees will be displaced. This addition is being asked for so that these long-term residents can age in place. This is what we consider a minor variance, and that's all we wanted to say. Thank you.
Perfect. We do appreciate that.
Finally.
Okay, excellent. Is there anyone else in the audience who wants to speak in support of the application or in opposition? I'm not seeing anybody. Okay, all right. So with that then, I think we can go to a vote of members of the panel. So all those in favor? All right, so Mr. Robinson, the application is unanimously granted. So good luck with that. It's good to see projects like this. All right. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Okay, bye now. All right, back to 2 and 3. So how's Mr. Jude doing with his, have we lost Mr. Jude?
Hello.
Hi. Oh, good. We can hear you.
I'm using a headset this time, so hopefully no technical issues this time.
I was going to say, don't touch that button. Whatever you do, don't touch that button.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I guess what I would like is just a brief explanation of the proposal, just a description of it. Let us know what you're doing. Do you have a presentation?
I did submit it. I did submit.
Did you want to use it? You're welcome to use it.
I have no issues with that. It just gives a little bit more context of the area, zoning.
Okay.
All right. I'm just going to start off by I highlight a couple of things from the City of Ottawa Planning Department. So I'm just going to read off a little bit and then I'll go on with the presentation.
You got 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes.
No
Just be
problem.
mindful of your time.
I'll stick to it. All right. So the address is 2476 Clover Street. The proposal is to build a semi-detached. Zoning is R3A zone. The official plan designates the property in outer urban transit. The property is also within the evolving neighborhood overlay. The city proposes a low-rise intensification that moves beyond the development standards of the underlying zone, where the proposal achieves the objectives of the transit. The overlay should feature urban built form and site attributions, including small areas, higher lot coverage, and no or limited parking. In this particular case, we're in area X, where parking is not required, even though it is part of our design and it is shown in my presentation. In regards to the zoning, again, it's a zone residential third density subsection A, R3A zone. It permits a mix of use of building forms. So the existing development on Clover Street consists of detached and semi-detached dwellings that ranges between 8.5 and 17.6 in width, and lot areas varying from 260 to 538 meters area. In terms of the city comments, so they said that the city is satisfied with the requested variance and maintain the intent of the zoning, and that the variances requested are in fact minor and do not create any impact on the landscape. If we can, and in regards to all the comments, forestry, everybody nobody had any objections. In terms of the conditions, we have no objections either. All right, if we can start with page 1. So page 1 just indicates what the variances are for. 2 minor variances: lot width, lot area. Lot width 7.62 meters is being requested, where the zoning requires a 9 meter frontage, and lot area we have 232.5, where the zoning requires 270. And that's for both parts of the semi-detached. If we can please go to the next page. All right, so just to give you a context of where it is, bottom is a subject property. That's where our property is. Just to give you a little bit of context, Heron Road is right north of the property. Bank is right to the east of it. We have Billings Bridge on the north side at the very top. Heron bus station close by as well. And to the west, we have Mooney's Bay O-Train. Just give a little bit of context. Next page, please. This here just gives you the zoning R3A, lot width, lot area. It's a square lot. It's 50 by 100 or 15.24 by 30.48. Next paragraph, please. Sorry, next page. This is the reference plan. It just gives you a context. Both lots are equal in width, length, and area. There's no difference into the two. I just wanted to bring your attention to the 2.92, where it looks like there's a jog in the front. Reason for that being is where we accounted for tandem parking on both sides, on both lots. So it allows for 2 driveways, 1 on each lot, even though it's not required in the zoning. This is something that we wanted for this development. And also to make reference, all setbacks are being met, and that there's no minor variances requested for height or front, back, or side setbacks. Next page, please. This I'm just going to summarize real quick. From the real estate agent that sold the property, basically saying that the house is not inhabitable in the existing conditions, and I'll make some really brief comments. He's saying that the owner owned the property since 1983. The house was relocated from its previous lot on Heron Road. Because of its relocation, that there's been uneven settling, and that for the most part, he's tried to upkeep it, and he's lived there for the majority of the time. However, he has moved out, and even though he's tried to maintain the best of his ability, there has been a lot of settling, structural issues on the property. When the property was listed up for sale, there was no guarantees as a condition of the structural items. The owner said that the owner indicated that it is a liability to allow any prospective buyers into the house, and that there are several portions of the foundation that have been compromised, which affected the basement with water damage and freeze-thaw action, which allow different pests, raccoons, squirrels, birds to inhabit the walls. The roof shingles have also experienced similar issues with water penetration and leaks into the house. It was decided that no prospective buyers or agents would be allowed to visit the interior. The owner also indicated that to every prospective buyer that it would not be insurable in its current state. Next paragraph, please.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up because your 5 minutes are up.
Okay, real quick. So all these lots I found, I just wanted to go two streets over. So I grouped them together. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All these are semi-detaches. I just focused on semi-detaches that are in undersized lots. That's it. I didn't focus on triplexes or more units, only semis. That's it. Next paragraph. Next page. Same thing, more comparables. Next one, please. This one here, basically, if you just focus on the very bottom where it says density, 1 semi-detached per 232 square meters, that's in terms of lot area, where the zoning requires 270 square meters. We can keep going forward. More just comparables, keep going. I'll take you to the summary page, keep going. Keep going, please.
Yeah, let's go to the summary.
And right there. So this right here, I summarized 26 properties, only within a 2 street to the east and 2 to the north, where if you look at the comparables, the subject property is the first property, everything else is just in terms of how much density is in that square area. Item number 2 was approved by panel 2 last month, January of 2023, where that semi-detached was approved. If you go next paragraph. I won't read this, but if this is part of the discussion,
please don't do that.
I won't.
All right. So, okay, I think we've, unless you've got something really.
That's it.
No. All right. Thank you so much. All right. With that, then I'm going to open it up to the panel members for questions. Any questions? Member White, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question regarding the location of proposed parking. It's my understanding, just looking at the site plan, that there's a driveway that's proposed to take parking to the side of the building as opposed to in front of the building. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Question of staff. There's one of the conditions mentions a tree planting plan. I'm assuming that there are limitations on making the majority of the front yard available for parking. In other words, further hard surface other than the driveway that will extend to the towards the back middle of the buildings, so that area is required to be landscaped. Could staff answer that question, please?
Ms. Kelly.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. So with the exception of the driveways, the remainder of the front yard is required to be soft landscaping. If that space can accommodate tree planting, that's the idea in terms of where the trees would be planted. I can defer to Ms. Young in terms of the specific requirements of the tree planting plan, if that's helpful, Member White.
Madam Chair, my concern is with respect to enforcement of these provisions. I know we may hear from some of the neighbors in this regard. There was a couple of submissions of examples of recent developments in the area where essentially there's no front yard landscaping, that the area of the front of the buildings has been entirely paved over and used for made available for parking. Can I ask to what extent enforcement is going on in the neighborhood with respect to illegal front yard parking?
Through you, Madam Chair. I can't speak specifically to the neighborhood, but we have bylaw enforcement team from the right-of-way group that review or go around the entire city and will issue compliance reports to properties where either driveways have been widened or extended in front of the dwelling. And then the property owner has the option to either correct the zoning deficiency or come in and apply for a minor variance application. So those are kind of the routes in terms of enforcement, and that falls on bylaw.
Thank you. I apologize, Madam Chair. Perhaps Ms. Young can help me with the planting plan. I'm assuming there's some kind of inspection that's carried out, and some securities that are taken with respect to that planting plan, so that that securities aren't released until such time as the city satisfied that the landscaping tree planting plan has been conformed with the construction.
Ms. Young, please. And I think we're speaking to condition number 2.
Okay, yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, I can't speak to the other sites in the neighborhood. I don't have the background on those ones, but generally where there's a condition on an application, then we do follow through and make sure that there is tree planting. It does happen through the building permit application as well. We have forestry inspectors who do check if this is done. We don't often ask for securities if it's just planting of 1 or 2 trees, so we don't really have that aspect, but certainly our staff are checking. I just don't know like the timing of the other approvals in the neighborhood, as this is a fairly new thing that we're doing since the bylaw was updated 2 years ago.
So it's an interesting comment about the securities. So when, what is that trigger to include in the condition securities? Because it's not here. So there's a requirement, but there's no real teeth, if you will, in some ways. So what is that trigger? So what do you typically use?
Generally, I have included securities in the condition where there are a large number of trees to be planted, like 5 or more, essentially. There's no reason why I can't include it in a situation like this. It was just thought to be overly onerous. So it can be done anywhere.
So I guess the concern, and Member White, if I'm putting words in your mouth, then let me know, but it's that we've seen examples in the neighborhood where the development is literally has become more asphalt than soft landscaping. And the only way to really ensure that that lasts over time is to put the securities in. And I think if I recall correctly, is it 2 years that those securities are held, Ms. Young?
I believe for planting, it's usually 1 year following the end of construction.
So, 1 year following the end of construction.
So generally that would be like when the landscaping is done, and then it's 1 year after that point.
From that point on, okay. So Member White, the question is, did you, if you're uncomfortable with the way the condition is worded, we could always add the requirement for securities,
Madam
to
Chair,
the satisfaction of the forestry services. So without putting Ms. Young in the spot and saying, well, how much? Or, what are we talking about? Maybe just say to the satisfaction of
Madam Chair, I think my concern is more related to enforcement of the provisions of the zoning bylaw. And as I say, this only comes about, my concern only comes about as a result of the submission of some of the submissions that we've seen from the neighbors on previous, and they cite previous developments where there's obviously major problems with compliance with the bylaw. So I think it's more an enforcement issue, and I'm not sure that we're in a position to deal with that. But I think we can put the city on notice that these are concerns, and I think residents in the neighborhood can do that as well.
Well, it's interesting because, we've we've encountered other types of issues where we're looking for improvement. And I think I've said this before, where the monitoring of the policy, if you will, or the, you know, whatever it is, the provision that we're trying to implement, to make sure that in fact there is that record of improvement going forward. So from a monitoring standpoint, so Mr. Just give me a minute to finish here, because what we could say as a committee is that it's great that we have these initiatives for, you know, tree planting plans and a requirement for a 50 millimeter tree to be planted on the property, but actually seeing the benefit of that over the long term. So what's the monitoring program for that? How do we know that those things continue and that we're not losing it? So there's an enforcement side, but there's also a performance of implementation of that provision overall. So there's two ways you can actually look at it. So I'm wondering, you know, maybe that's something we can raise with the planning staff and forestry staff as part of our discussions, to say, you know, can you tell us what the metrics are on that, and how much success we've had when we've implemented something like this without securities and with securities? Are we seeing a difference? Are we, I don't know, just a thought. I thought I'd raise it because we had talked about it in another way, another issue. Go ahead, Ms. Member Willis.
Madam Chair, I think that in a case particularly where the residents of the area have concerns, a complaint to the building department about non-compliance or paving the front yard will elicit a visit by the building compliance people, and in order to comply will be put into place if whether or not there's a security. So I personally think that to add additional conditions at this time, we have no indication there's going to be any issue with this. And then because it's under the scrutiny of the public anyway, if something happens down the road where the plan is not complied with, it's simply a phone call to the city to get someone out, an inspector out there to make sure that they've complied.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, any other thoughts, comments on any of these? All right. Oh, Mr. Jade, go ahead, please.
Just really quickly, I just want to clarify. So in this particular application, we're not proposing to remove any existing trees. So
no, it's the requirement under condition 2.
So there is a requirement to plant. Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. There is a requirement to plant a new tree, but that's not to say, and again, we have some confirmation from forestry that a tree information report was not required in this application because no trees were being proposed to be removed in this application.
Yeah, I did note that as part of the comments. Yeah, not required, as there's no protected trees on site, so that's in the planning report. Okay, well, if there's no more questions from the panel then on either the consent or the minor variance application, I am going to go to the public. We do have some speakers that are on the list, and I'm going to start with Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I do have a presentation that I prepared if you want to bring that up.
Sure. Just be mindful you've got 5 minutes.
Okay. So I own and have lived in this small bungalow beside the property in question since 2008 with my wife and 2 boys aged 10 and 5. First of all due respect, the notice has not been posted on the property. It was there for about 1 day and it wasn't posted since.
The sign, you're talking about the sign that's a requirement under the regulations under the Planning Act?
That's
Is
right.
that what you're saying? Was not there?
Yep. It was there for about a day and then it disappeared. Actually, I think it's on the ground. If you see the presentation there, it's on the ground behind the parked car.
Mr. Jade, can you speak to that? Because I'll be honest with you, if it wasn't up for the time frames of the Planning Act, we have to adjourn and give it time to be up.
I have no problems addressing. The sign was posted.
It was
Following on his
posted, I
due?
saw it, but it
For
was
the
there.
I have a picture.
entirety of the time prior to this hearing.
So I drove by that, so we drive by that property every 1 to 2 days. There were 2 cases, and I don't know why. I don't know if it was snow plowing or somebody actually physically removing it, but somebody did actually physically remove the sign, put it on the ground, and then I had to pick it up, put it back on again. I had to do that 2 times on this application, but we do drive by that property every 1 to 2 days. And I do have pictures every single time I did post it.
Okay, so I live beside it, and if you see the presentation, I just took that picture a couple days ago. It's not there.
All right,
Anyways,
let's have a look
that's
at the
not the biggest
presentation and then,
of my concerns.
okay, let's have a look at the presentation.
It's on the ground there behind the red car. Also, the application says that it's for an existing duplex dwelling, but it's a single family home. And I believe the application should be rejected and the house should be rebuilt as a single family home. And if I may ask one question, how many bedrooms are proposed to be built here?
So actually, that's kind of irrelevant in some ways, right?
Well,
So we don't ask
Madam Chair,
for
it is
the,
relevant.
we don't ask for the interior. We don't ask for floor plans or any of that, right? So we're actually just speaking to the use, not to the number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, or any of that. That's not something that this committee gets into in any way. So I'm going to ask you to keep going with your presentation.
Okay, well, I'll continue on then. I've heard stories that there are other properties that Mr. Jade owns, and as many other landlords do, squeeze as many bedrooms as possible into these dwellings. I won't feel safe letting my kids out to play in the yard or walk to the school bus with so many people being around. Like, we have a yard that I moved in, and I bought it so my kids could play in it, and it's becoming untenable with the number of people and cars. They can't walk to the school bus on their own. There's no sidewalk on the street. And I'm a lay person, first time to the rodeo here, but the application does say it's for a minor variance as well. So this doesn't seem minor in my humble opinion at all. And it seems like this is changing the rules. If we go to the next slide, please. So I love living in Heron Park. There are lots of reasons I live here, and it's close to Carleton. It's close to transit. The Heron Station, Mooney's Bay Station, Billings Bridge, and Clover Street has easy access to Heron, Bank, Bronson, Riverside, and there are a couple schools in the neighborhood that people have to drive to. Often down Clover Street to get to. Go to the next slide, please. I believe a lot of other people would love to live here too, and certainly small landlords and developers have noticed, and they've been squeezing more and more units into the neighborhood and more people into the neighborhood. Next slide, please. So all of the traffic, cars, pedestrians, school buses, OC Transpo buses, all filter through the light at Clover and Heron. There's no sidewalk on the street. So the more people you jam into the neighborhood and on the street, that means more people parking on the street. And it just creates a real challenge for my kids to walk to the school bus, or myself to walk to transit, and many others, of course, walk down to the transit on that street as well. The next slide, please. So because of this intensification, we have more vehicles driving too quickly, more vehicles parked on the street, more foot traffic. And so this is especially dangerous. And then there's the annoying parts where we have the noise, we have the garbage, the rodents, and the marijuana stench. And frankly, over the years, it's started to get worse and untenable. We've had many occasions where the kids' school buses have had to divert their routes because the cars parked on the street. The snow plows, emergency services can't get through. There's been some crime with break-ins, wild university parties. Next slide, please. And yet here we are again for another application to add more people to the street. And in what seems to be a very ad hoc approach to development. Next slide, please. And so since about 2015, I've witnessed what was 15 single-family homes on the street now become more than 36. And I think I've underestimated the number of units. So at least 36 units. And if you count number of bedrooms and number of adults moving in, it's significantly more. Because if you have one bedroom, well, it's one adult living in that bedroom, often two, and those two often have cars. And so there's a high probability that, just the neighborhood's filling up in a very ad hoc approach. And we also have Sawmill Private at the end of the street, which was built around 2004, which is another 40 homes. So this is a lot more dense than the original neighborhood had planned. Next slide, please. So like, as a lay person, just a normal dude living on the street with his kids, trying to have a normal life, we're intensifying these existing neighborhoods in what seems to be an ad hoc approach. And instead of starting new high density neighborhoods that are designed for high density, why aren't we doing that? Why are we intensifying these existing neighborhoods? My suggestion for Clover Street would be, first of all, to ensure we have basics like a sidewalk and streetscape improvements. It was mentioned before, the parking situation in front yards. Stop the intensification, and this property should be rebuilt as a single family home. Start replacing like for like, the way the properties were originally divided and designed and meant to be.
So, Mr. Thompson, I'm going to give you about another minute to wrap up.
Yeah,
that's okay. You're doing really well, by the way. So
okay.
I like your presentation. So from that side, don't worry about that. But if you
a little bit nervous.
Mind just wrapping up.
Thank you. What in effect you're doing is reducing the number of single family homes, and thus making it harder for families like myself to find homes for their family, and it's becoming more expensive and harder for families to find home when you reduce and no longer rebuild like for like as single family homes. So that's my main suggestions to you, and I'd really appreciate it if it was rebuilt as a single family home, so I could have a family as a neighbor instead of 18 adults who are, have this neighborhood's been decimated by people and companies that don't really care about it.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I do appreciate the time you've taken to prepare that presentation and to walk us through it. So thank you very much. So I'm going to open it up then to the, I'm going to open it up to the committee members at this point to ask questions of Mr. Thompson, and then we'll go on to the next person who's on my list. So any questions for Mr. Thompson? Yes, Member Willis.
Yes, Madam Chair, just actually first for the applicant relating to a comment made by the speaker, is this unit, is it the house that's to be developed actually 2 units or 1 unit at the present time? It says that it's a duplex. Is it a duplex?
Through you, Madam Chair, my understanding through the agent that at one point the basement was rented. I'm not familiar. Again, I did not go into the property. Nobody was allowed to go inside the property, as mentioned in the letter from the agent, because of the existing condition. Okay. So I'm taking the agent's word on what it was.
Okay, so just now switching to the speaker. So the concerns that you have about intensification, traffic, safety, the number of people that are going to occupy this, all we're talking about here, to clarify, is potentially it's either a single or a duplex now. The addition of 1 extra household is all that's being contemplated by this committee. It doesn't have anything to do with how many bedrooms or how many people might be hanging out there. It's simply switching what may be a duplex, what may be a single, to semi-detached. And I'm just wondering why that is such a concern to you.
Well, since I lived here, there's been a single gentleman and his son have lived in the home, just the two of them, since 2008. What I fear is going to happen is you're taking one property, dividing it into two, and then on each side, there's going to be an upstairs and a downstairs. There's going to be 4 units upstairs, 4 units upstairs, 3 units downstairs, 3 units downstairs. So it's 14, sorry, not units, bedrooms. So potentially 14 bedrooms. And as we've seen in other developments on the street, it's often filled with students. I believe Mr. Muhammad has an advertisement for another property of his not too far away for a 1-bedroom, part of a 5-bedroom unit for $925. And so that's what's going to happen, is it's going to be rented out as bedrooms, not entire units or households. And so you'll have a boarding house effect where you're going to have
excuse me,
four adults.
that's pure. I'm getting annoyed because that's pure speculation. I don't see any difference in terms of the number of potential tenants, if that's even a concern, whether it's a single or a semi-detached. All we're dealing with in front of this committee is the form of the building, and we're talking semi-detached instead of single. We're not addressing what could happen in future if there's a rooming house, which I would suggest. If there is a concern about that a report be made to the city and they do an inspection. And if there's a rooming house beside you that's not legal, then something would be done about it. But to assume that because there's going to be a semi-detached beside, if this is approved, that it's going to cause chaos in the neighborhood, I think is a stretch. It's just
so, Mr. Muhammad, is there going to be a downstairs and an upstairs unit on both sides? So in sense, 4 new units?
Hello, I just unmuted. So first off, I would like to mention, thank you for your concerns. A lot of the stuff that you actually mentioned in your report, I'm actually a fan of, to be honest with you. I didn't mention this in the report. I am a resident on Clover Street, and I have been since we moved in here in 2015. I don't have any plans of moving out. A lot of your concerns are actually things that, with traffic, with a lot of things that you mentioned, and some of the suggestions you actually indicated in the report, I actually do support. And I have no issues, helping any way I can in regards to that. In regards to the actual use of this, to answer your question, I'm not trying to defer. I just want to comment on your presentation. Very good presentation, by the way. In regards to the actual use, it's a semi-detached. So it's 2 units, 2 principal dwelling units. Whether or not a secondary dwelling would be added, it's a right of use. I cannot comment on it.
Well, in your other property that you've developed, is there separate units on both sides? Is there an
Okay,
A
so
and
Mr.
a B on
Thompson,
both sides?
we're talking about this property. So, okay. I think the question's been answered, but I will go one further. So I think Ms. Kelly, your hand was up at one point, and I do have a question for you. So let me ask my question first, and then I want to hear from you as well. So for a semi-detached dwelling unit in this zone, there is the provision for secondary units as of right. Is that correct?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, secondary dwelling units are permitted. I'll go a step further and also add that with Bill 23, the province's recent legislation, that makes 3 units as of right in detached and single detached and townhouse dwellings.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. So the purpose of the question was to say, notwithstanding that these are semi-detached that's being applied for, Mr. Thompson, your concern about having maybe 2 secondary units, 1 in each unit, and is a possibility, and it is as of right. So there's nothing anybody can do about that. It's a building permit, and they're in the unit. It's not development outside the unit. So typically they don't come to us for any minor variances or any of that kind of thing. Unless the secondary units has to have certain frontage. I think there was some zones that's triggered. I might be wrong about that. So, but with the new bill, and Ms. Kelly was quite right, the province now permits, and it's in full force and effect, up to 3 units as of right on a property. That means anybody on your street could do exactly that. So I just wanted to make sure that that's clear to everybody. So even if you see a semi-detached, there is always a potential for those additional units. Back to you, Ms. Kelly, though, because I did see your hand up. So did you go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify in terms of the use of the existing property, whether or not it's a duplex or a single detached dwelling. According to the city's records, I was able to go back to the construction permit from 1959, and at that time it was listed as a 2-story duplex residence.
It was. All right. Okay. But I think what I understood from Mr. Thompson, though, is that there may have been at some point in time the house combined and used as a single family residence. But all that to say, though, that it initially had that 2 units in it. Interesting, because that means if you look at it that way, then in fact we're not adding any additional units to this property. It's just the form is going to be different. Okay, Mr. Thompson, one last word from you, and I'm going to go on to the next speaker.
A question for you, actually, Madam Chair. What is the definition of a minor variance?
So there's 4 tests under the Planning Act, and that's how you determine whether a use is minor or not. It's not a percentage. It's not. It really comes down to what the impact is in the area.
Yeah.
So,
and so the impact was an important aspect of this concern that I've brought forward. And hence the question, how many bedrooms and what is the intended use? I mean, I'm very for property rights, and I don't want to tell somebody else what to do with their property, but I can see the consequences very easily, what is going to happen.
So a lot of the issues that you raised are quite valid. So there's no problem with having raised them. They're just outside of the jurisdiction of this committee. That's the issue. So if you have, if you want to have street calming features added, or if you want to, ensure that there's better snow clearing in your neighborhood, you want to make sure that emergency vehicles can get through and that a sidewalk be installed because it happens to also be a bus route, or all of those things, you really need to go through your city councilor and put pressure on that city councilor to get you the kinds of things that you need to improve the habitability of your neighborhood. It's outside this committee's jurisdiction, unfortunately, because we are really faced with only the merits of what's in the application right now. And if you compare it to some of the other, what's happening in that zone in comparison to other neighborhoods in the city. So there's nothing unusual about this request. What I'm seeing is that there's other things going on that are creating the problem, not necessarily intensification. So okay, I'm going to go on then to the next speaker, and I see that Ms. Gamma Pinto has her hand up, but I do want to go by my list first, and then I'll come back to. So I'm looking for Susan Carbone. Coordinators, do we have?
That's me. Hello.
Okay. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I have admin on the screen, unfortunately.
Okay.
Because I was confused when I signed in, so I didn't put my name.
That's
Sorry
fine.
about that.
So we're going to give you. So we do have your name and your address. We're going to give you 5 minutes.
Right. Okay. So thank you very much. I really appreciated Ben Thompson's presentation because he voiced a lot of what I was going to say. And so what I'd like to do is talk about the committee's responsibility with respect to the 4 tests. That have lived in the community. I am the president of the Heron Park Community Association. And with respect to the 4 tests, you include what the intent of the official plan is, the intent of the zoning bylaws, the appropriate use of the property, and that respectfully, the decisions that are made with respect to allowing reduced lots of area and width actually is the precipitating factor that allows for larger building envelopes. And with larger building envelopes, that's when you get more people. And then the domino effect happens, and that's what Ben Thompson was talking about. So with the narrowing of the side yard setbacks, we're seeing that the functionality of the property doesn't allow for garbage to be stored at the back. So garbage is stored on the front steps. And typically now in this application, I wasn't aware that there's going to be parking on site. So that's a good thing. But typically there isn't room for parking because the developer maximizes the building envelope for the full size of the property. And so what you said, Madam Chair, is with respect to, you know, a lot of our problems are outside of the realm of this committee. But in fact, from our view, you as a committee, by approving these minor variances, are causing building structures that are basically the impetus of our problems. And by going to the city with the number of bylaw requests or bylaw service requests, and to get speed bumps, and to have people not store their garbage on their front step, or to park on their front lawn, is very much a downstream approach. So what we're asking for is for the committee to take a broader picture of what is what is included in the 4 tests. And basically, you know, we look at this as there are, I guess in our experience, you tend to weight certain criteria more than others with respect to our safety, our quality of life, affordability, and that those are really important aspects of the official plan. And they're really important aspects of how zoning helps to create a built form that allows for quality of life. And so from our perspective, like, we've not been overly successful trying to put our case to you, but we do have our lived experience with similar types of approvals from the committee for very similar, if not identical, properties, and the outcome is exactly what Ben was talking about. And so it all starts with you. You give the approval to allow these big structures, and then the developers go in and they build them to the max, and we're left dealing with all the externalities. And so I'm trying to think of the word. I'm asking that you broaden your perspective to take into consideration all of the priorities that the official plan outlines with respect to planning and with respect to zoning. So we're not saying not to intensify, but we're saying to intensify in a way that doesn't cause and degrade our community. And that's what's happening with these specific types of bills. And it starts with you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Just want to remind you of the comments that we made earlier about what's as of right under the Planning Act, and which is completely out of the committee's hands. So with the new bill, what you will see is that property owners will have the right to have not just one under the zoning, not just 2, but up to 3. residences on their property. And as long as it meets all of the requirements of the zoning bylaw, it's a building permit. That's what's required. So you may say that, but I'm telling you that that there has to be more than one strategy for dealing with the issues that you raised tonight. You can't put it all on the Committee of Adjustment. You have to look at other strategies to address some of those issues. So thank you for your comments. So I do appreciate it. Does anybody on the committee have any questions or comments for Ms. Carboni? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So I'm going to go to Ms. Gama Pinto, who has her hand up, who I am taking it wants to speak next.
Thank you. I don't know. Hello.
Hello, I thought we lost you for a minute there.
I'm trying to start my video, but if it doesn't come on, if you have my voice, that's all that's really necessary. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. My first point is that Mr. Judah is a resident of Heron Park, and he's well known to us. You may remember my name because I have spoken in person in front of the committee. I too am a member of the Heron Park Community Association, and I've lived in Heron Park on Gilles Street for close to 35 years. It's coming up. Anyway, in the last 12 or so years, we have seen a lot of intensification, and some of it is just fine. You know, semis being a semi being built on Secord, which was our first intensified single family home being taken down and a semi being put in. This semi had 2 families on either side, and while we had concerns originally about it, it turned into a very nice development. And we've also supported the development of triplexes on Heron Road, as well as other semis we have not objected to. And we've supported numbers of other intensification. Going back to Mr. Judah, he has been in front of your committee a few times for other developments, one on Carlson, I believe. And also, I believe he was an agent for, he's been an agent for other developers in our neighborhood. You talk about the form of the building. We have looked at the building form, and it is identical to several, both in our neighborhood and one or two that have been built in a neighboring community in Alta Vista, but it's an Alta Vista zone area that's also an R3. These particular semis are not true semis. They are with very high basements. Mr. Judah chose not to speak to the issue of secondary units, and I do understand that they are of right. I don't have an issue with the as of right use of secondary dwelling units. But the secondary dwelling units and these particular semis that have sought these particular minor variances have been turned into student bunkhouses. Okay, now your committee members have said that you don't care about, you have no right about the inside of the building and how many bedrooms, etc. That's not your concern, but it is our concern because we have these semis because of the variances that have allowed the larger footprint that has then allowed the larger bedroom count. So the impact of the minor variance is directly related to the impact on that Mr. Thompson and Ms. Carboni, as well as other members of communities have raised with you on other occasions. I did send in a little presentation, and I did include an ad for the property on Carlson, which indicates, 1 bedroom out of 5. The properties on Secord that did come before you a couple of years ago, all are now fully occupied, and we're looking at 16 bedrooms in the semis that originally came forward to you for minor variances. So the minor variances have led to outsized impacts on our neighborhood, and that in a way violate the principle, the values of good planning, of community safety, of sustainability, of health and safety, particularly given the pandemic and the numbers of people having to live now in very close quarters. So I've touched that the form of this building does have an impact, and the form of this building is connected to the variances that are being asked for. The amount of your committee members have also mentioned that these are bylaw issues and that we should take it up with bylaw. We have taken it up with bylaw. We've asked the city to, and the city has brought in more bylaw officers, but there's not enough bylaw officers to look after and keep these properties in a good condition. The amount of garbage, the amount of cars parked on our streets. We did not have this problem even 12 years ago, but now I think we have submitted evidence of buses not being able to pass through our streets because of the amount of cars parked. As I indicated on Secord, where this very similar model is being built, we're looking at a very large bedroom count and no parking in these cases. But even with these driveways, the most you can maybe get 2 cars. So we're looking at 4 cars with a possibility of 16 bedrooms or even 10 bedrooms. Even if half those people have cars, there's not enough place to put them.
All right, so Gamma Pinto, all right.
So
Thank you very much.
I think I've made my point. I think I've just to support Ben and Susan. The impact going to the 4 tests, the impact is not minor. The variance is not minor in its impact, and it does violate and undermine the values of the official plan, the zoning bylaw, and the 3rd test. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you. Any questions from the panel members for Ms. Gamma Pinto? And I do remember you, by the way. I was actually telling the members when I saw your name that I have seen you before the committee before.
Yeah,
so
there's trouble.
Well, I'm glad that you stay involved. So that's wonderful, and having the experience before the committee is always helpful as well. So, okay, I don't have anybody else on my speakers list, so I'm going to make a general call out to the audience. Is there anyone else who would like to speak either for or against this consent application and minor variance application at 2476 Clover? Okay, I am not seeing anybody come forward. So committee members, any questions for clarification? So Mr. Jude, then the minor variances are for lot area and lot frontage only. So I don't see anything here that speaks to reduced side yard setbacks or rear yard setbacks or any of that. So, and I take it then, I didn't see as well I saw examples that were submitted of other semi-detaches in the neighborhood. You might understand then that you would be looking at developing semi-detached dwellings that are very similar to the ones that you sent pictures of to us.
So to clarify, sorry, through you, Madam Chair, to clarify your first point and a comment that was made, there's no larger building envelope than what is already allowed in terms of zoning. We're conforming to all setbacks, whether front, back.
I understand. And that's why I was reiterating that. It is only for lot area and lot frontage. And so the building envelope is what it is. So unless you want to be before us, again, you need to be mindful of what this, the rear yard setback requirement is, what the front yard setback, the side yard setbacks, the amenity area requirements, and anything else that applies to your property. So otherwise, you would be back to us with additional minor variance requests. And so I believe, based on what I'm seeing in the site plan, this maybe just proposed, but it looks like it meets all of the other standards in the zoning bylaw. So, and to be clear, and I just, Ms. Kelly, just to be clear, so this is 2 units, semi-detached with, as of right, for basement apartments, if that's what they want to do. The fact that they have higher foundations, that's as long as they're not higher than the building height limit, then there's no issue from our standpoint. And I don't want the community to think that when we say something like, or I say something like, there's no issue. It doesn't mean that we don't feel for the community and some of the issues that you've raised and the concerns. We absolutely do feel for those concerns. When I mean issues, I mean strictly from a zoning standards standpoint or an official plan standpoint. So Mr. White, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just some clarification from staff. I think I've got this correct. Looking at the zoning bylaw, what we're talking about is permitting semi-detached dwelling here, which is, and I'm going to the definition of semi-detached dwelling in the zoning bylaw, which is 2 attached principal dwelling units, and then carry that to the definition of dwelling units, means a residential unit that is used for intended for use as a residential premises by one household, and that household, and not more than 3 roomers or boarders. And then it goes on to suggest that household dwelling unit contains no more than 4 bedrooms. I just want to make sure I'm correct in what I'm reading here. I think I am, because it's coming from the bylaw that I looked at today. So there are limitations on the number of bedrooms according to the definition in the zoning bylaw. Am I correct on that?
Yes, that is correct, Member White.
So if
Ms. Kelly, so just so, sorry, just one clarification, but that is per unit. So
yes,
4
the bedrooms are
per unit.
Yes, it's 4 bedrooms per unit. And as we discussed on the floor this evening, they are permitted to have 2 additional dwelling units per lot.
So not theoretically, but in practical purposes, the maximum number of bedrooms that would be permitted if the semi-detached is permitted on this property would be 16 bedrooms, correct?
Yes.
All right, so there's a lot that goes into here, right? So under the building code, so you have to have the right amount of room to be able to have that secondary dwelling unit. Can you really fit in 4 bedrooms in, a basement apartment? I don't know. Like, I think there's some limitations to that. I think, and we need to be mindful about that when we think about even so, yes, you can create another dwelling unit on your property if that's what you wanted to do. But again, unless you're meeting completely what the requirements of the zoning bylaw are, you're coming back to the committee.
Sorry, I lost my train of thought, Madam Chair, but
sorry about that.
Actually, what we're talking about is a maximum of 16 bedrooms if it's semi-detached with secondary dwelling units in each of those is built. I also noticed that, I'm confused about the difference between this situation and what is referred to as a rooming house, which is
Ms. Kelly. Did you want that from Ms. Kelly, Mr. White?
Yes, please. Which is permitted, but only on an arterial road or I think they call it a major collector. What's the difference between the accommodation permitted in a rooming house, which is not permitted in this location, and the semi-detached with the secondary dwelling units, which is permitted in this zone?
Through you, Madam Chair. So a building can only have 1 rooming house. So 1 rooming house can only be in a building. And then a building containing a rooming house can also have 1 secondary dwelling unit. So to go back, I guess, to the question between like the difference between the max number of bedrooms in units and how it fits into the semi-detached dwelling. In theory, hypothetically speaking, you could have 16 bedrooms, I guess, based on the amount of secondary dwelling units that could fit into a semi-detached dwelling, but that's not to say that that actually works under the building code. So the current definition of a dwelling unit is four bedrooms, but as we're reacting to these new legislation from the province, there might be some shifting in the language or the definition and the max number of bedrooms as a response to kind of that new legislation.
Thank you. I remain totally confused. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it is going to stay. It's going to get more confusing, and I think what I'm hearing from Ms. Kelly is, so the building code has requirements for habitable bedrooms. So I think there has to be, there's right off the bat, the house has to be big enough to, I'm looking at this is a frontage of 7 point something meters. And if you look at, once you put the setbacks all in there and look at what that envelope is, can you truly get a secondary unit in a basement, have a unit that size on that kind of frontage to have 4 bedrooms and still comply with the building code? So I'm sort of thinking about how that is all going to work. But it sounds like the city's reacting with this notion that if the province is going to allow as of rights for units, and maybe one of the ways to control that is to, I don't think you can do anything about the principal dwelling. I think they'll probably have to leave that at 4 bedrooms, but maybe you're going to reduce the number of permitted bedrooms under the other units. I don't know. Do they have that flexibility? So, Mr. Thompson, I'm not going to go to you because the public hearing portion is closed at this point. So we're just, so right now the committee's in what's called deliberations. So we're gonna continue having discussions about the number of bedrooms and feasibility. Anyhow, so I guess at this point, we're still being faced here with a semi-detached. If you look at the the properties around it, I mean it's a built form in the area already. So it's not blazing new trails, it's a permitted use. Has anybody got any thoughts? Ms. Willis? You're on mute. You're on mute. You're on mute.
It always happens when I'm at my most eloquent. I just think we're going off on a tangent here. What's before us is semi-detached unit. We've just confirmed from staff that it was a duplex at one point, same number of units as before. All we're looking at is variances with regard to lot area and lot frontage. Nothing to do with bedrooms is in front of us. And if it was, there's nothing we can do about it anyway. So I think we're going down a road we don't need to go down. It's simply what's before us is 2 units on 2 lots with reductions in frontage and area. That's it. So I don't know why we're talking about bedrooms.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. I think, and I think the answer to that question is because there's a lot of concerns from the community that we've heard about, the potential to start carving up those units and what does that mean from an overall potential impact. And I think that's why we're talking about bedrooms. But I think what's really important is to understand the limitations on the bedrooms in the first place. So
we have no jurisdiction over it, then.
No, I know, but it's
not relevant.
to ensure it's to ensure that we at least address the concerns and talk about it in a way that maybe helps with fuller understanding. So, okay, if the committee has no questions, then I think I'm going to give Mr. Jude a minute to wrap up if he wants and to respond, and then we'll go to a vote.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I appreciate everybody's presentation, and in regards to a lot of the concerns that were brought up again. I actually would like to actually speak to Ben maybe afterwards. I actually am presenting currently out of Clover Street where I reside. So we'll be seeing each other quite a bit. That being said, what's in front of you here is exactly as per Ms. Willis, the member, that we're here in regards to a semi-detached. We are conforming to everything. If we do not conform, we do have to do as-built after construction. If there is a minor variance required for any particular reason during construction, after construction, we will be back. We've never been back. We've never had to go back. We're very strict with how we build. We build exactly as per approved drawings. So there's a lot of checkpoints throughout the process, from building permit to a building inspector to forestry to everybody down the road, where there are a lot of checkpoints along the way.
Okay, so with that, Mr. Jude, you do have 6 conditions, and in fact, one has been added with regards to a joint use and maintenance agreement. You're aware of that?
I am, and I am
Okay.
fine with them.
And with the respect to the original 6, you're fine with
No
those
issues.
as well?
There's no issues with those.
Okay, all right. Member White, go ahead.
Just a final comment, Madam Chair. My questions were raised just to get some clarification on the zoning bylaw in terms of semi-detached and units permitted and that sort of thing. I don't think there's anything in the zoning bylaw that mitigates against the approval of an application that will permit semi-detached dwellings in this area. And I don't believe that there's anything there in the definitions that would preclude us from approving or considering our approval of the applications that we have.
All right, thank you, Member White, for that. So, yeah, and I would agree with those comments. All right, so we're going to go to a vote on the consent application first. So all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the consent application is unanimously granted. And on the minor variances, all those in favor? Okay, again, for the record, the minor variance application is also unanimously granted. With that, then, Mr. Jude, I appreciate that you've come and talked honestly about being a member on the street and resident on the street. I think it sounds like the community, you need to come up with how you might address some of the other issues that you've raised. They're all very valid issues that you've raised. I just don't think they're a committee of adjustment issue. But so keep up the discussion, or do get into more discussion with your neighbors, and talk about how some of the concerns that you have raised today can be addressed quite possibly going forward. Okay. With that, I think that brings us to the end of that application. So we only have one application left, and I think this is where Member Willis gets to leave us for the evening. Thank you very much. And so we're going to go to 13, which is 6301 Campo Drive. And Ms. Libman is the agent. Good evening.
Hi.
So thanks for hanging in there. We had promised Kathleen that we would let her get away.
I suspected that might be the case.
All right, so I'm going to read to you. Oh, no, I don't need to. You're the stat deck came in for you, so I don't need to do this. That's great. Thank you for doing that. It's fairly simple, but can you just briefly walk us through what's happening here on the consent side?
Yeah.
Do you have
I have a presentation?
Okay, go ahead.
And I think we'll just jump to slide 4. I think you know where the property is. We're here in Canada North. And so what the property that we're dealing with tonight is phase 1, outlined in red. Phase 2 is to come. Next slide, please. So there was an official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment, and site plan control application that have all been approved for this property, site 1. There's an apartment, 266 units, 84 stacked townhouse dwellings to be built, adequate parking and bicycle parking. Next slide, please. And the application is to sever the apartment building from the stacked townhouses. And then on the next slide, a series of servicing easements. And maybe we'll just move a couple more slides to number 9. So here we see in green the apartment lands being parts 20 and 7. And then one more click. And I've highlighted part 7, which is an easement in favor of the townhouse development for parking. Next slide, please. Oh, and this just shows sort of a slightly different shape of part 20 at grade. Part 8 is there, sort of part 20 goes under, it's a parking garage, underground parking garage. And so on the previous slide, it just goes a little bit further north. Next slide, please. Here we are at grade. I can't see the full thing because of the images, so of the panel members on the side. So I think I may have spoken to the wrong part of that slide. So next. So this is the townhouse side of the property, and I have some animation showing you each of the easements to come. So one click. So this is part 1, which is a drainage swale. Next. Part 2 is for the storm sewer. Next. Part 3, the water main. Next. Oh, you did part 4. Part 4 was the storm sewer and water main, the intersection of the two. Part 5 is the water main. Next, part 6, again, the storm sewer. Next, part 7, or rather part 15. Water main. Next, part 17, again, the intersection of the water main and storm sewer. Next, 18, water main, and lastly, 19, storm sewer. And so that outlines for you the easements that we're seeking. Next slide, please. So it is, as I said, to create one new lot and a series of easements. I would submit to you that a plan of subdivision is not required for that type of relief. And as you're aware, the new OP has policies within it that direct the committee that they do have the authority to grant strata severance applications. Next slide. So we have reviewed the comments received from technical agencies. We note that planning has no concerns and thank forestry for the note that all trees have been removed in accordance with the approved plans. There were also no concerns from Hydro, MTO, or Rideau Valley Conservation. Next slide, please. We did receive one comment from the public. We did respond, and I understand that Mr. Williamson has registered to speak this evening. I'll let him outline his concerns, but I do think they relate primarily to tree removal, and a number of trees were removed for this development, and I'm told that trees on site 2 have also recently been removed, but I can tell you that they were removed in accordance with the approved plans, the tree conservation report, and the addendum, and in accordance with the approved site plan. And that's the end of my presentation.
All right, thank you. Just to clarify then, so the strata element is only related to that portion of the underground parking garage, right?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. All right, questions for Ms. Libman from panel members? No? Okay.
I believe
that,
Mr.
then,
Hindle has his hand up.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Go ahead, Member Hindle.
Yeah, I was just going to build on that piece about the strata consent. So it's I guess in this case it's fairly small pieces that are stratified. It's just it seems like it's on the edge of the parking garage versus the on the surface parking and that interface. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay, otherwise it's straightforward easements that match what's being proposed for development. So, okay. Member White, go ahead, please.
Madam Chair, just a quick one. I understand from the report there that site plan has been approved for this project. So it's gone through a public process for site plan approval.
Yes. And a zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment.
Thank you.
Okay. And so the comment about the trees then is that nothing that we're doing here tonight, because there are consents for things like easements and rights of ways and strata, no impact, no development being proposed, so absolutely no impact on any trees as a result. Right?
That's correct.
Okay. All right then. If there's no other questions from the my two colleagues that are left on the panel, we have then for 13, I think, Mr. Williams, you are the only person on my speakers list. So I will give you 5 minutes. Go ahead. Oh, but you're on mute though. So.
Yeah, I'm so, can you see me? I'm sorry, this is the first time I've ever done something like this. I had a presentation, but all I was concerned was with the trees being cut down, because my mom's been here for about 2 years in Canada. She moved from London, Ontario, and she lived in this residence, and she's enjoyed, she moved in Canada Lakes. Oh yeah, because of the trees and that kind of thing. And we never knew when we moved in to these flats that they were going to be cut down. We never saw any signs at first, but then obviously the signs are now up and stuff like that. But my concern was that we are taking it down. We took down so many trees, and as I was researching it, basically the guy said they're going to keep 1 acre of park space, and the rest is going to be high density townhomes or apartment buildings and stuff like that. But my concern is we took down mature trees for this project, and we're only going to have 1 acre of land for the trees. So where are they going to be planted in Canada? Because we've lost so much, right? Like, for example, an acre of land carries about 300 to 500 trees. I know for a fact those trees went all the way to Lorbine, they went to Campu and outwards, okay? So I just want to know where we're going to be planting the trees that we have lost. Because when I talked to the tree association, when I talked to other people, they said the developer should be planting the removal of the trees. But if you only, like in that plan that you showed us, where are you going to plant them? Because that plan did not have much park space. It had mostly townhomes and hotels, and we're building Canada Lakes. Canada Lakes is a beautiful area.
Williams, everything you're raising has to do with the site plan process and with the rezoning. And so were you not involved at that point? Because that would have been the right time to raise those issues, because it's not part of our application.
Oh, sorry. To be honest, I lived in the UK because I'm a teacher. And so I came back to Ottawa and moved here. And I just noticed when I was here in late October. So obviously, I think you guys already did that concern, but it was already done. But the thing is, I'm not, like, you guys can, like, obviously the developer is going to develop it. I just want to know where they're going to replant the trees that they took down.
Okay.
And
so
I
what
want
I'm
to
going to
know.
suggest you do, so we don't have any of those answers for you because we don't have the site plan in front of us, so we can't answer those.
So
we are
where would I
dealing
find-
very strictly with easements and very technical kind of no development kinds of things.
So for you, yeah, for you, sorry, because it's important because I'm big on the environment. The links, you know, the golf course, will I be able to attend that meeting then? Because obviously that's another issue that I have.
Oh, well, so all right. So what you're going to need to do is you can get in touch with Well, the planning department, because you need to get plugged into those other development process, planning processes. And the only thing I can think of is either we ask, maybe who's the planner on this, Ms. Glazero? Would it be possible for you to just find the right contacts? The site plan, is the site plan, the whole public process is done, Ms. Lidman, for the site plan, so that ship has sailed?
Yes, the site plan's approved.
Okay, but maybe there'd be a way then, even Ms. Young, because it sounds like Mr. Williams' concerns has a lot to do with trees and the development in Canada and the impact that will have on the existing and mature trees. Should we maybe be speaking with your group, either you or somebody else at Forestry Services?
And also, I just.
So Mr. Williams, let's
sorry.
let Ms. Young answer the question.
Okay, sorry, Ms.
That's okay. Yes, you can be in touch with forestry. I'm not sure the best contact. I think there is a forestry@ottawa.ca that would be able to provide an answer. And if not, you can reach out to me specifically. And I think my address is online here on the Committee of Adjustment page.
Okay, so that's where I find it. Because I know this sounds silly, but I walk around like Winterset too. And so when you were talking about how developers sometimes don't plant the right amount of trees, when I walk through Winterset, I notice there's a lack of trees there, even on their properties, in fronts of their buildings, even the park that's near it. You know, they could plant more trees. And
so, Mr. Williams, you're very clearly very passionate about trees, which is great.
Yeah, I am.
That's nothing to do with our application at the moment. So I am going to give you the chance to continue the discussion with either Ms. Young or somebody else at Forestry Services, and wish you all the best.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Then with that, then, is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak either for or against the application before us at 6301 Campo relating to easements and strata consents? Anyone? I am not seeing anybody come forward. So with that, then I think members of the panel, I think we can go to a decision. But before I go there, Ms. Libman, can you confirm that you're okay with the conditions?
Yes, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. In that case, members of the panel, all those in favor? All right, so for the record, the application is unanimously granted. Thank you so much, Ms. Libman, for hanging in with us. and good luck. Looks like it's almost done. It's almost done.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
All right, thank you. Good night to you as well. So I need a mover for adjournment. Mr. White was faster, seconded by Mr. Hindle. So with that, again, thank you, planning staff. Tonight was an interesting night because again, we have members of the public that have some concerns that have nothing to do with their application sometimes, but it is really important to be able to walk them through, like, so, you know, for them, the sky is falling and you need to be able to put some parameters around just, you know, how much the sky can fall. And so it was really good to be able to get some of those answers from you tonight. So thank you for that. And to you, Ms. Young, because it sounds like you're going to have an interesting discussion with Mr. Williams coming up. So, and again, thanks so much to our committee staff. It's always great to have you supporting us as usual. So thanks, everybody. Have a good evening. I won't be here the next meeting, so you'll be in Mr. Hindle's capable hands. So we'll see you mid-March. Okay. Good night.